You think your biggest problem is people, but you are wrong. Because your real problem is that you react to them, you argue with them, you defend yourself to them, and you keep explaining your life to those who have already decided who you are, and in doing so you are not protecting yourself, you are slowly giving your power away without even realizing it. I will tell you something most people will never understand. The moment you feel the need to prove yourself is the moment you have already lost control. Because a man who truly knows his value does not argue to be right, does not defend to be accepted, and does not explain to be understood. He simply moves in silence and lets his life speak for him. And if you can learn this one rule, you will become someone no one can control, no one can provoke, and no one can defeat mentally. 1. The trap of arguing why winning still costs you. Your power. Most people believe that if they can prove their point clearly, speak with confidence, or bring enough facts into a conversation, they will win the argument and feel satisfied. But what they fail to understand is that the moment they step into an argument, they have already entered a situation where logic is no longer the main force controlling the outcome, because most arguments are not really about truth. They are about ego, identity, and the deep emotional need to feel right. Even when facts are present, people often hear only what supports their own beliefs, and anything that challenges them feels like a personal attack rather than useful information. When you argue with someone, you are not just sharing ideas. You are entering an emotional exchange where both sides are trying to defend their self-image, and in that space, even the strongest logic can lose its power if the other person is not willing to listen or change. You may explain your point again and again using better words and stronger reasoning, but instead of creating understanding, the conversation often becomes more tense and exhausting, leaving you feeling drained, frustrated, and still misunderstood. Because the result depends not only on what you say, but on whether the other person is open enough to receive it. A disciplined mind learns to recognize this pattern early and chooses not to get pulled into arguments that do not lead to growth or clarity. Silence in this situation is not weakness or avoidance. It is awareness and control. It is the understanding that not every disagreement needs your attention, and not every opinion needs your response. When you refuse to argue, you are not losing the conversation, you are protecting your energy and your peace, and when you walk away without needing to prove anything, you show a level of self-control and confidence that most people never develop. 2. The illusion of defending yourself, why you don't owe anyone an explanation. Most people feel an automatic urge to defend themselves the moment they are judged, criticized, or misunderstood, because deep down, they believe that if they do not correct the situation, it will define how others see them. But what they fail to realize is that this reaction comes from giving too much importance to other people's opinions. The need to defend yourself often feels like strength, but in reality, it is a subtle form of dependence, because you are allowing someone else's perception to control your response and your emotional state. The truth is that people will form opinions about you no matter what you do. And those opinions are usually shaped by their own experiences, biases, and limitations, not by your full reality. You can explain yourself perfectly and still be misunderstood. You can defend yourself with logic and still be judged unfairly, because some people are not trying to understand you. They are simply trying to confirm what they already believe. When you keep defending yourself in these situations, you are entering a cycle where you are constantly reacting, trying to fix something that was never fully in your control. A strong and disciplined mind begins to break this cycle by understanding that not every opinion deserves a response, and not every accusation deserves your energy. Instead of trying to correct every misunderstanding, you start focusing on living in alignment with your truth, allowing your actions over time to speak louder than any explanation you could give in the moment. When you stop defending yourself unnecessarily, you are not accepting false judgments. You are simply refusing to let them control you. And this creates a quiet confidence that is far more powerful than any argument or explanation could ever be. 3. Stop explaining your life. The power of silence, mystery, and inner authority, most people have a hidden habit that quietly weakens their presence. And that habit is the constant need to explain themselves, their decisions, their choices, and even their identity, as if their life requires approval from others in order to be valid. They explain why they chose a certain path, why they made a certain decision, why they are different, and why they believe what they believe, thinking that if they can just say it clearly enough, people will understand them and respect them more. But what they do not realize is that the more they explain, the more they give away their power, because they slowly place their value in the hands of other people's opinions. When you constantly explain yourself, you are not just sharing information, you are seeking acceptance, even if you are not aware of it. You are trying to control how others see you, trying to shape their perception, trying to make sure they do not misunderstand you. But this creates a dangerous cycle, where your peace becomes dependent on whether people agree with you or not. And the truth is, no matter how well you explain, some people will still misunderstand you, some will still judge you, and some will simply not care, because they are seeing you through their own lens, not your reality. A powerful mind understands that not everything needs to be explained, because not everyone deserves access to your thoughts, your reasons, and your direction. When you explain less, you begin to feel a shift inside you, because you are no longer trying to manage other people's perceptions. You are simply living your truth without needing to justify it. This creates a quiet confidence, a sense of inner authority that does not rely on words, because your actions and your presence start to speak for you. There is also something deeper that happens when you stop explaining yourself too much, and that is the creation of mystery. People are naturally drawn to what they cannot fully understand. And when you speak less and reveal less, your presence becomes stronger, not weaker. It is not about hiding yourself. It is about being selective, about understanding that your life is not something that needs to be fully understood by everyone around you. When people cannot easily define you, they cannot easily control you. And that is where real power begins to grow. This does not mean you never communicate or never express yourself. But it means you choose carefully when to speak and when to remain silent. You stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided how they see you, and you stop wasting your energy trying to convince those who are not open to understanding. Instead, you focus on living in alignment with your values, allowing your actions to become your message and your consistency to become your explanation. Silence, in this sense, is not emptiness. It is control. It is the ability to remain centered without feeling the need to fill every space with words. When you master this, you begin to notice that people either respect you more or reveal their true nature more quickly, because your silence removes the opportunity for unnecessary conflict and meaningless debate. You become someone who does not chase understanding, but naturally commands it through presence. And this is where you start to become untouchable. Because you are no longer trying to prove yourself, you are no longer trying to be accepted, and you are no longer trying to explain your life to those who were never meant to understand it. You simply live, move, and act with clarity, and in that clarity, your power becomes undeniable. 4. Emotional control. The hidden battlefield where most people lose their power. Most people believe that their emotions are a natural response to what happens around them, and because of this belief, they move through life thinking that other people, situations, and circumstances are responsible for how they feel. But this is one of the biggest illusions that keeps them weak and reactive. The truth is not that emotions are the problem, but that the lack of control over those emotions is what creates suffering, confusion, and loss of power. When someone criticizes you, ignores you, disrespects you, or challenges your identity, it may feel like they are the cause of your reaction, but in reality, what they are doing is triggering something that already exists within you. They are not creating your anger, your frustration, or your insecurity. They are revealing it. And this is why two people can experience the same situation and react completely differently, because the difference is not in the situation, but in the level of control each person has over their own mind. Most people react instantly without awareness, as if their emotions are controlling them instead of the other way around. A single word can change their mood, a small disagreement can ruin their day, and a moment of disrespect can stay in their mind for hours or even days. They replay conversations, imagine different outcomes, and build emotional storms inside themselves, all because they never learned how to pause and observe what is happening within them. This is where they lose their power, not in the situation itself, but in the reaction that follows. A disciplined mind operates differently because it understands that there is always a space between what happens and how you respond. That space may be small at first, almost invisible, but it is the most important space you will ever learn to control, because within that space lies your freedom. When something happens, instead of reacting immediately, you pause, you observe your thoughts, you notice your emotions rising, and instead of becoming those emotions, you watch them. This simple act of awareness begins to break the automatic patterns that control most people's lives. Emotional control is not about suppressing what you feel or pretending that nothing affects you, because suppression only builds pressure that eventually explodes. True control is about understanding your emotions without becoming a slave to them. You allow yourself to feel, but you do not allow those feelings to dictate your actions. You recognize anger without acting on it. You notice frustration without letting it control your behavior. And you experience discomfort without trying to escape it immediately. When you reach this level of awareness, something powerful begins to happen. People can try to provoke you, but they will not succeed in controlling your state. They may expect you to react, to argue, to defend, or to explain, but instead they are met with calmness, clarity, and control. And this confuses them, because they are used to people reacting automatically. They are used to pulling others into emotional chaos. But you are no longer operating at that level. This is the true meaning of strength. Not the ability to dominate others, but the ability to remain steady within yourself no matter what is happening around you. When you control your reactions, you control your energy. And when you control your energy, you control the direction of your life. You are no longer pushed around by emotions, opinions, or external pressure, because your state comes from within, not from outside. Over time, this level of control transforms the way you experience life. Situations that once disturbed you lose their power. People who once triggered you no longer have the same effect, and challenges that once felt overwhelming become manageable. You begin to move through life with a calm intensity, aware of everything but disturbed by nothing, focused on what matters without being distracted by what does not. And this is where you begin to understand why emotional control is the foundation of becoming untouchable, because once you master your inner world, the outer world loses its ability to control you. No one can make you react. No one can force you into emotional chaos, and no situation can shake your core unless you allow it. You are no longer a prisoner of your reactions. You are the master of them. This is the hidden battlefield where most people lose their power, but it is also the place where you can reclaim it completely. Because the moment you stop reacting blindly and start responding consciously, you step into a level of control that most people will never experience. 5. Detachment, the silent power that makes you mentally untouchable to exist. Most people live their entire lives without realizing how deeply they are controlled by attachment, not just to people, but to opinions, outcomes, validation, and the constant need to feel accepted, understood, and appreciated. They believe they are making free choices, but in reality, their emotions rise and fall based on how others treat them, how situations unfold, and whether life matches their expectations. This hidden dependence is what makes them fragile, because when your peace depends on external things, you are always one situation away from losing control. Detachment is often misunderstood as coldness or lack of care, but true detachment is not about disconnecting from life. It is about freeing yourself from the need to control what you cannot control. It is the ability to care deeply without becoming emotionally dependent, to engage fully without losing your center, and to move forward without carrying unnecessary emotional weight. When you are attached, every opinion feels personal, every rejection feels painful, and every misunderstanding feels like something that needs to be fixed. But when you begin to detach, You start to see things differently. You begin to understand that not everything is about you. Not every reaction from others is a reflection of your worth, and not every situation needs your emotional investment. You stop taking things personally, not because you do not care, but because you understand that most people act from their own perspective, their own struggles, and their own limitations. This shift alone removes a huge amount of unnecessary suffering because you are no longer carrying emotions that were never yours to begin with. Attachment creates fear, the fear of losing people, the fear of being judged, the fear of being misunderstood, and the fear of not being enough. And when fear enters your decisions, it begins to control how you act, what you say, and how you respond. You start adjusting yourself to fit expectations, explaining yourself to avoid judgment, and defending yourself to protect your image. Without realizing it, you slowly lose your authenticity, because you are no longer acting from truth, you are acting from fear. Detachment breaks this cycle completely. When you are detached, you are no longer afraid of losing approval, because your sense of self does not depend on it. You are no longer afraid of being misunderstood, because you do not need everyone to understand you. You are no longer afraid of people leaving your life, because you understand that not everyone is meant to stay, and that your growth sometimes requires distance, not attachment. This creates a powerful sense of inner stability. You can walk away from situations that drain you without overthinking. You can stay silent when others expect a reaction without feeling weak. And you can make decisions based on clarity rather than emotional pressure. You are no longer reacting to life. You are moving through it with awareness and control. Detachment also allows you to see things more clearly. Because when you are not emotionally entangled in every situation, your judgment becomes sharper and your perspective becomes wider. You stop reacting impulsively and start responding intelligently. You stop chasing outcomes and start focusing on actions. You stop needing immediate results and start trusting the process. This shift alone puts you in a completely different position from most people, because while they are controlled by their emotions, you are guided by your awareness. There is also a quiet strength in detachment that most people do not understand. When you are no longer desperate for approval or validation, your presence changes. You become calmer, more grounded, and more focused. People can feel this even if they cannot explain it. You are not easily influenced, not easily shaken, and not easily controlled. And because of this, your words carry more weight, your actions have more impact, and your presence commands more respect. This is what it means to become mentally untouchable. It does not mean you are unaffected by life. It means you are no longer controlled by it. You still experience emotions, you still care, and you still engage, but you do so from a place of strength, not dependence. You are connected, but not attached, aware, but not overwhelmed, present, but not controlled. And once you reach this level, everything changes. Situations that once disturbed you lose their intensity. People who once affected you lose their influence. And challenges that once felt overwhelming become manageable. You begin to move through life with a calm confidence, knowing that no matter what happens around you, your inner state remains stable. This is the power of detachment, not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. Not the rejection of life, but the freedom within it. And when you truly understand this, you realize that the strongest position you can ever be in is not holding on to everything, but being completely okay with letting go. 6. Energy protection. Stop giving your power away without realizing it. Most people wake up every day already tired, already mentally scattered, already emotionally drained. And they believe it is because life is difficult, because responsibilities are heavy, or because the world is demanding. But the deeper truth is that most of their exhaustion does not come from what they are doing. It comes from what they are allowing. It comes from the constant leakage of their energy into things that do not deserve it, conversations that go nowhere, arguments that change nothing, opinions that do not matter, and emotional reactions that bring no value. Energy is your most valuable resource, more valuable than time, more valuable than money, because everything you build in your life depends on the quality and direction of your energy. If your energy is scattered, your results will be scattered. If your energy is controlled, your life becomes focused and intentional. But most people never learn how to protect this resource, so they give it away freely without awareness, reacting to every comment, engaging in every disagreement, and explaining themselves to people who were never interested in understanding them in the first place. Every time you argue, you are not just using words, you are spending energy. Every time you defend yourself, you are investing attention into something that may not deserve it. And every time you explain your life unnecessarily, you are opening the door for more opinions, more judgments, and more mental noise. Over time, this creates a pattern where your energy is constantly being pulled in different directions,
leaving you with very little left for what actually matters. A disciplined mind begins to see this clearly and makes a powerful shift from reacting to selecting.
Instead of responding to everything, you begin to choose what deserves your attention. You realize that not every comment needs a reply. Not every situation needs your involvement, and not every person deserves access to your time and energy. This is not arrogance, it is awareness, it is the understanding that your energy is limited, and if you do not protect it, it will be consumed by things that do not contribute to your growth. Protecting your energy also means becoming aware of the environments you place yourself in, the people you surround yourself with, and the information you consume daily. Negative environments drain you, toxic conversations weaken you, and constant exposure to noise distracts you. When you are not selective, you become influenced without realizing it. Your thoughts become cluttered, your focus becomes weak, and your clarity disappears. But when you start protecting your energy intentionally, you create space for focus, for creativity, and for growth. There is also a deeper level to this discipline, and that is emotional energy. Many people carry emotional weight that does not belong to them. They hold on to past conversations, replay situations in their minds, and carry unresolved emotions that continue to drain them long after the moment has passed. This is one of the biggest ways people lose their power, because even when they are physically present, mentally they are stuck in situations that are no longer happening. A strong and aware mind learns to release what does not serve it. It does not replay every negative interaction. It does not hold on to every opinion, and it does not carry emotional burdens that add no value. Instead, it processes, learns, and lets go, keeping only what strengthens it and discarding what weakens it. This ability alone can transform your entire state. Because your energy is no longer tied to the past, it is available for the present. When you truly begin to protect your energy, something powerful happens. Your focus becomes sharper, your decisions become clearer, and your presence becomes stronger. You are no longer easily distracted, no longer easily pulled into unnecessary situations, and no longer controlled by external noise. People may try to involve you in drama, provoke you into reacting, or pull you into conversations that do not matter, but you remain steady because you have learned the discipline of selection. This is where you start to become different from most people. While they are reacting, you are choosing. While they are drained, you are focused, and while they are scattered, you are directed. Your energy is no longer something that is easily taken from you. It is something you control and invest wisely. And this is what makes you powerful, not the amount of energy you have, but the way you use it. Because once you stop giving your energy away to everything around you and start directing it toward what truly matters, your growth becomes faster, your mind becomes clearer, and your life begins to move in a completely different direction. This is the discipline of energy protection, and once you master it, you will realize that most of what used to drain you no longer has access to you, because you have finally understood that your energy is not something to be spent carelessly. It is something to be guarded, directed, and used with purpose. 7. The untouchable mind, becoming someone no one can control. Most people spend their entire lives trying to control the outside world, trying to manage how others see them, how situations unfold, and how life responds to their efforts. But they never realize that true power was never meant to be found outside. It was always meant to be built within. They try to control opinions, avoid criticism, and shape every interaction in their favor. And in doing so, They become more and more dependent on things that were never fully in their control to begin with. An untouchable mind is not created by controlling others. It is created by no longer being controlled by anything outside of you. It is the result of deep inner discipline, the kind that allows you to remain steady when others are reactive, calm when others are emotional, and focused when others are distracted. This level of control is rare because most people are constantly pulled in different directions by their thoughts, their emotions, and the expectations of those around them. When you begin to develop an untouchable mind, you start to notice a shift in how you experience everything. Situations that once triggered you no longer have the same effect because you are no longer reacting automatically. You observe more, you respond less, and you choose your actions with clarity instead of impulse. This does not mean that you become emotionless or disconnected. It means that you become aware enough to not let those emotions control your behavior. Imagine someone trying to provoke you, expecting you to argue, to defend yourself, or to explain your position, but instead they are met with silence, calmness, and complete control. In that moment, they lose their influence over you because their power depended on your reaction, and without that reaction, they have nothing to hold on to. This is what makes you untouchable, not because nothing happens around you, but because nothing has the power to disturb your inner state without your permission. An untouchable mind also understands that being misunderstood is part of the journey. Most people fear being seen incorrectly, so they spend their energy trying to explain themselves, trying to correct every assumption, and trying to make sure everyone sees them in the right way. But a powerful individual accepts that not everyone will understand them, and more importantly, they do not need everyone to understand them. They focus on living their truth instead of explaining it, knowing that clarity in action will always be stronger than clarity in words. This level of mental strength creates a presence that is difficult to shake. You become someone who does not react to every opinion, who does not get pulled into unnecessary conflict, and who does not feel the need to prove anything to anyone. Your confidence is no longer loud or defensive. It is quiet and grounded, built on self-awareness rather than external validation. People may not always understand you, but they will feel your stability, and that alone creates respect. There is also a deep freedom that comes with this way of living. When you are no longer controlled by others' opinions, you are free to act based on your own values. When you are no longer driven by emotional reactions, you are free to make clear decisions. And when you are no longer attached to outcomes you cannot control, you are free to move forward without fear. This freedom is what allows you to grow, to evolve, and to stay focused on what truly matters. Over time, this mindset changes everything. You stop wasting energy on things that do not contribute to your life. You stop engaging in situations that drain you, and you stop allowing external noise to disturb your focus. You become more intentional, more aware, and more disciplined in how you move through the world. And because of this, your life begins to reflect that clarity. Your actions become more effective, and your results become more aligned with your purpose. This is the highest level of self-mastery. Not the ability to dominate others, but the ability to remain in control of yourself no matter what happens around you. It is the understanding that your peace is not something that should be easily disturbed. Your focus is not something that should be easily broken. And your energy is not something that should be easily taken. When you fully embody this, you no longer need to argue because you are not trying to prove anything. You no longer need to defend yourself because your identity is not built on others' opinions. And you no longer need to explain your life because your actions already speak for you. You simply exist with clarity, move with purpose, and remain grounded in a way that cannot be shaken. And this is what it truly means to become untouchable, not invisible, not distant, but completely in control, fully aware, and impossible to manipulate, because your power no longer depends on anything outside of you. 8. The discipline of silence. When saying nothing becomes your greatest power, most people are uncomfortable with silence. Not because silence is empty, but because it forces them to face themselves without distraction. They fill every moment with words, explanations, reactions, and noise, believing that constant expression is a sign of confidence, but in reality, This need to always speak is often a sign of inner instability.
When a person cannot remain silent, it usually means they are trying to control how they are perceived, trying to defend their identity, or trying to avoid being misunderstood. Silence, when misunderstood,
Looks like weakness. But true silence is one of the highest forms of control. It is the ability to remain present without feeling the need to react, the ability to hear without immediately responding, and the ability to observe without becoming emotionally involved in everything that happens around you. When you master silence, you begin to realize how much of what people say is driven by emotion rather than truth, and how much of what you used to say was unnecessary. There is a powerful shift that happens when you stop speaking impulsively and start choosing your words carefully. You begin to notice that not every situation needs your opinion, not every conversation needs your input, and not every moment needs to be filled with explanation. This awareness creates space in your mind, space where clarity can grow, where emotions can settle, and where your responses become more intentional rather than automatic. Most people speak to react, but a disciplined mind speaks with purpose. When you speak less, your words carry more weight because they are not lost in a stream of unnecessary communication. People begin to listen more carefully when you do speak because your silence has already created presence. Your words are no longer used to prove something. They are used to express something meaningful. Silence also protects you from unnecessary conflict. When someone is trying to provoke you, they are often looking for a reaction because your reaction gives them power. The moment you respond emotionally, you step into their frame, and now the situation is no longer under your control. But when you remain silent, when you do not argue, defend, or explain, you remove the fuel that keeps the conflict alive. Without your reaction, the situation loses intensity, and the other person is left without the control they were trying to gain. There is also a deeper level of intelligence in silence, because it allows you to observe more than you speak. When you are not focused on responding, you begin to notice patterns. You see how people behave, how they reveal themselves through their words, their tone, and their reactions. You start to understand that people often expose their true nature when you give them space to speak, and this awareness becomes a powerful advantage because you are no longer reacting blindly. You are responding with understanding. Silence is also closely connected to self-respect. When you stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, you show that you value your energy. When you stop arguing with those who are not open to listening, you show that your peace is more important than being right. And when you stop defending yourself unnecessarily, you show that your identity is not fragile. It does not need constant protection. At first, this discipline may feel uncomfortable because you are breaking a habit that most people live with their entire lives. You may feel the urge to respond, to correct, to explain. But with practice, you begin to experience a different kind of strength, a quiet strength that does not rely on words. You begin to feel more in control, more centered, and more aware of what truly matters. Over time, silence becomes natural. Not forced, not artificial, but intentional. You speak when it adds value. You remain silent when it does not. And you move through conversations with a level of control that most people cannot understand. You are no longer reacting to fill space. You are choosing when and how to engage. And this is where silence transforms from something uncomfortable into something powerful. Because you realize that you do not need to speak to be heard, you do not need to explain to be understood, and you do not need to react to be respected. Your presence alone begins to communicate what words never could. This is the discipline of silence, not the absence of voice, but the mastery of it, not withdrawal from life, but control within it. And when you truly embody this, you become someone who cannot be easily drawn into chaos, someone who cannot be easily provoked, and someone whose power comes not from how much they say, but from how deeply they understand when to say nothing at all. Most people will hear these principles, understand them for a moment, and then return to their old patterns, because reacting is easy, arguing is automatic. Defending feels natural, and explaining gives a temporary sense of control. But mastery is not built on what is easy. It is built on what is disciplined, repeated, and deeply understood. The rule is simple, but living it is not. Never argue, never defend, never explain, not because you have nothing to say, but because you have reached a level where your peace is more valuable than being right, where your identity is no longer shaped by opinions, and where your life no longer needs to be justified through words. When you stop arguing, you remove yourself from battles that drain your energy and lead nowhere, and you begin to see how many conflicts in life exist, only because people refuse to let go of the need to be right. When you stop defending yourself, you break free from the invisible pressure of other people's judgments, and you start living with a quiet confidence that does not depend on approval. And when you stop explaining your life unnecessarily, you step into a level of presence where your actions speak clearly enough that words become secondary. This is not about becoming silent in a weak way. This is about becoming selective in a powerful way. It is about knowing when to speak and when to remain still, when to engage and when to walk away, when to respond and when to let silence do the work for you. This level of awareness transforms the way you move through the world, because you are no longer reacting to everything around you. You are choosing your actions with clarity and intention. As you begin to live this way, you will notice something that most people never experience. Situations that once disturbed you will lose their intensity. People who once triggered you will lose their influence, and opinions that once mattered will begin to feel irrelevant. You will no longer feel the need to prove yourself in every conversation, and you will no longer feel the pressure to explain yourself to those who are not willing to understand you. Your energy will become more focused, your mind will become calmer, and your presence will become stronger, not because you are trying to control others, but because you have finally learned to control yourself. And this is the highest form of power, because it cannot be taken from you, it cannot be shaken by others, and it does not depend on anything outside of you. There will be moments when you are tested, moments when someone tries to provoke you, misunderstand you, or challenge you, and in those moments, your old habits will try to return. You will feel the urge to argue, to defend, to explain, but this is where your discipline matters the most. This is where you choose who you are becoming. Every time you remain calm instead of reacting, every time you stay silent instead of arguing, and every time you walk away instead of explaining, you strengthen your control and move closer to becoming truly untouchable. This path is not about isolating yourself from the world. It is about moving through it with awareness, control, and purpose. It is about understanding that your peace is not something to be traded for temporary validation. And your energy is not something to be wasted on meaningless battles. So remember this clearly. You do not need to argue to prove your intelligence. You do not need to defend to prove your worth. You do not need to explain to prove your life. You only need to remain in control of yourself. And once you master that, you will realize that no one can control you, no one can disturb you, and no one can take your peace away again. That is the moment you stop reacting like everyone else and start living like someone who is truly free.